welcome to Greenfest. This is a ferociously exciting celebration of all things environmental and green. It's great to see so many members of the community here today showing their support for sustainability and protecting our environment. We're calling today for a tram-style light rail system for Brisbane. Brisbane is desperately in need of sustainable transport solutions. We're currently dealing with a public transport system that is simply not coping with the numbers of people in the community who would like to use it. Brisbane is ideal in terms of its layout as a city for tram-style light rail. We've launched a parliamentary e-petition on the Parliament website at www.parliament.qld.gov.au. This is an opportunity for members of the community to in fact show their support for sustainable transport solutions, namely a light rail system for Brisbane. Our intention is to show to all major parties, all old parties, that there is strong support in Brisbane for a sustainable transport solution, namely a light rail system. This builds upon an announcement that the Queensland Greens made during the recent Brisbane City Council election. Times have changed, times are more urgent. We need to do what was proposed by the Green Party during the City Council election and more. We need to do what they proposed back then and better, and our opportunity is to do that today. The community can show their support for this by signing the e-petition.
Well, for the very first time in recent political history anyway, the federal government is actually poised to become involved in funding public transport systems in our cities and regional areas. And that's huge news, essentially because for 11 years the Howard government completely absolved responsibility, didn't want anything to do with public transport, and so it was always funded entirely by the states. So for the first time through the Building Australia Fund, there's actually the potential for sustainable transport funding from the federal government for the first time. We really need to see that Infrastructure Australia funding going into sustainable public transport systems in our cities and in our regional areas. And so we're calling really on the Queensland government to be making very strong bids to the federal government, not for more freeways, not for coal ports, but for public transport infrastructure that everybody can use.
We're very excited about the opportunities that trams provide. Our intention is in the coming months to release more detailed planning, but what we see is an extensive light rail system for Brisbane and surrounding areas. And it's very important that we don't just see Brisbane as the metropolitan Brisbane City Council area. The growing parts of southeast Queensland surrounding Brisbane are Redcliffe, which desperately needs a rail line, but we shouldn't forget places like Redcliffe, Pine Rivers, Ipswich, even the Redlands and Logan. I mean, trams are ideal in terms of getting good, sustainable public transport, servicing areas that just don't have it already, and light rail can do that quickly. I mean, the infrastructure can be built and can be up and running really quickly, but we'll be providing detailed plans in the coming months. We're supportive of expanding the passenger rail network. We're supportive of having more buses in southeast Queensland, but we're also very supportive of sustainable public transport, and light rail fits the bill. You can run light rail on renewable energy, and that's the important thing to remember in all of this debate. Light rail gives you the capacity to in fact run your public transport system based on renewable electricity, and Queensland needs to, in a serious way, develop a world-leading solar energy sector. Our belief is that you do that hand in hand with sustainable transport like our call for light rail today.
What do you think of the Bligh plan put forward so far?
Oh look, I've welcomed that, but with the caveat that it needs to happen sooner. It also needs to the Bligh Metro plan needs to not leave the University of Queensland out of the loop. The University of Queensland is the second most popular destination for commuters on any given day in Brisbane, next to the CBD. It's important that we listen to the administration of UQ when they say that UQ shouldn't be left out of the loop on future transport solutions. But having said that, welcome any investment in public transport is a very positive thing that we would welcome, but we'd like to see it sooner.
And the people who are most at risk from rising oil prices and housing vulnerability are people in outer metropolitan areas. So what the Greens are doing in Brisbane, but also in Perth and in Melbourne, and we'll be rolling out proposals for Sydney as well, is looking at the outer metropolitan areas where it's most needed. And light rail is actually perfect for that, because you've got low density streets where you can put light rail down run of traffic. It's much less invasive because you're not putting big corridors through people's backyards, so it's much less invasive than heavy rail. And you can use light rail as a feeder to get people onto the heavy rail and onto the underground systems or busways or whatever's being proposed. So there's a really important niche for light rail for the areas where of very high car dependence. And some of the best research in the whole country is being done right here at Griffith into outer metro housing and transport vulnerability. So we've informed our work by that.
This is an opportunity for the community to sign the parliamentary e-petition, which makes clear to the state government that there is strong community support. I mean, I don't want to see a situation where the government, or the opposition for that matter, can persist with the idea that no one told them that these were important and sensible transport options. So this is an opportunity for the community to sign the e-petition, and you'll be able to see the raw numbers in terms of how many people are passionate about a sustainable transport solution, namely light rail in Brisbane. There is funding available from the federal government, but it's up to the states to really get behind this sort of stuff.
Well, we've still not seen the final arrangement for the Building Australia Fund. The legislation will probably be introduced into the federal parliament before the end of the year. But essentially what we do know is that there's $20 billion from surpluses from 07-08 and 08-09. A quarter of that has been quarantined for the National Broadband Network. So that's essentially around $15 billion of Commonwealth funding that they're saying to the states, put up your proposals for 21st century infrastructure, for so-called nation building. So it's a good example. Ronan and the Queensland Greens here are going to be able to lead the charge on the Bligh government to make sure that Queensland's bids are intelligent and aren't for more freeways or for coal ports. And at the same time, we'll be working in the Senate to make sure that the federal government is assessing all infrastructure bids from all of the states according to priorities of oil vulnerability, social justice, climate change and so on, rather than it being used as a slush fund for industry.
Well, it's very important that there's links and interchanges between all public transport options. We would see light rail as building upon the currently existing systems of busways, buses and heavy rail. We see this as an important opportunity to actually expand public transport in southeast Queensland, and it's very important that all of those transport options interconnect.
You do need a central public transit authority to make sure that everything's networked properly, because essentially what you're doing, paying attention where people live and where they want to go, is making sure that the distributor networks, whether it be buses or light rail or whatnot, are feeding the spines and the kind of core areas where people work or shop or take their kids to school or whatever. So it is actually very important not to just have private companies sort of cherry picking the most lucrative routes, but that it is properly planned and coordinated. So in European cities or in East Asian cities where public transport's a bit of an art form, what's happening more now in North America as well, you'll see one of the essential components is an authority that's making sure that everything is quite well coordinated. The fact that it is also very good for land values because it's fixed infrastructure. People consider bus routes are a little bit ephemeral, they can change. But light rails, it's rail in the streets, it's fixed infrastructure, and people can invest against that. And so they have found in other areas that it's one important way for the state to help fund the network, but also it's a bit of a guarantor of land values in those areas, which is another reason why we should be looking at outer metro areas. So yeah, it all does need to measure together. So congestion is a really key thing. Electrifying your transport network has great greenhouse benefits as well if you're putting the renewable capacity in at the same time. And it does tend to, public transport architecture, the way the cities develop, is completely different to the way that a sprawl auto-dependent suburb develops, and that you need to create pedestrianised, child-friendly corridors that are linked together by the fast, clean and very reliable public transport networks. You end up